Threw down 2 days live stream, a little happy hour, a little dinner. We got an event planned Q4. Yes. Stay tuned. Yes. We're going into the events business. Robbie, Andy, the boys. Shout out.
2 straight days, live stream straight from permissionless to Rollup TV. Coming to the #1 spot. Don't wait up.
We'll see you around the timeline. Feels good to be back.
Yo, yo. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Hope you guys are enjoying the day 2 of the bear market.
Or
maybe it's day 3 of the bear market. How's your bear market going, Rob?
when do you think we entered the bear market? Like, was it when we dropped below 100K, or where do you think the line was?
No, the bear market started probably in like early October. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been a good bear market so far. Lost about 30% of the port. How are you doing over there?
Well, it's funny because, these assets, I was watching Arthur Hayes yesterday, and the general thesis is like, as long as we're printing money, these things go up and to the right, and the debasement trade is pretty much in full effect. And Bitcoin is at 95K. It feels like we could go all the way down to 75, 80K, and Bitcoin's still in a bull market.
Seems like he's still in the denial phase, folks. It's good to know. Guys,
I'm buying all the way down.
We've got Hugo Filion from Flare coming up. We're running a little bit behind here, so we're going to get him fired up, get him up in the stage. Hugo is going to be talking about bringing XRP Ripple into DeFi, kind of what that looks like for their team. And yeah, pretty excited to talk with him. I feel like XRP has gotten a ton of traction as of recently because of the just broad adoption and huge raise that they had. So let's bring him up on stage and let's get this show on the road, guys. Hugo, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure, man. We've seen XRP in the market ever since we got started back in 2017. You guys were there building, had some trials and tribulations along the way. Certainly, who hasn't? But you guys have made it through the storm, persevered, and made it out into a much greener pasture of the current landscape for digital assets, market conditions, and regulatory environment. Maybe you could just talk to us about what building in Ripple world feels like. How long have you been? Did you go through kind of like the times when Ripple was getting persecuted by the SEC and the lawsuit? What was it like how has the experience of building in Ripple evolved over the last couple of years?
Yeah. So let me try and give you a bit of an overview of Flare. So Flare's a standalone layer one EVM. And we specialize in data. So we're effectively the only major layer one with fully enshrined data protocols, both for price oracles and for Web 2 and Web 3 data. So all of that's handled by the validators. All of that's secured by stake. And we've been very aligned with XRP from the beginning, mostly because we think that there is a sensible strategy to bring assets like XRP that don't have smart contracts onto a chain. We wanted that chain to have its own data protocols because otherwise, why not just use a wrapped version through a custodian? And so we built bridges based on those data protocols to Flare. So that's kind of long and short of why Flare exists. We've been very focused on XRP because Bitcoin has, already wrapped Bitcoin. It's quite large. There's hundreds of Bitcoin L2s, most of which won't survive. And we thought that the XRP market was a particularly good market, ready for DeFi. And no one else thought that at the time when we were raising, not a single person. Almost every VC said to me, the XRP army will never use DeFi. What we've seen is that more than 70% of the XRP that has come to our chain since we launched the bridge 5 or 6 weeks ago is in DeFi. So we can dig into that in a sec. But it's quite refreshing to see those people who everyone said they'll never touch DeFi actually really get stuck in. So, in terms of building in the Ripple ecosystem or the XRP ecosystem, it's hard. There's nothing you can do with the other chain, or very little in terms of like being able to get programmability from it. But that's why we exist. But that means that building a bridge is quite difficult. It's the same with building, a really robust Bitcoin bridge, a non-custodial bridge. We've worked with the Ripple team. We've worked with the developers, non-Ripple developers around the XRP ledger. And in fact, we'll be talking about smart accounts in a minute, which is a product we're working on with a wallet called Zaman, which is pretty much the largest XRP wallet. That's not a Ripple team wallet. That is a group of independent engineers. And we are working with them to make the onboarding experience into DeFi on Flare very, very much easier. So hopefully that's a short synopsis.
Absolutely love it. You've got to have some pretty thick skin in order to build in the ecosystem. I'm also curious just to hear maybe the steel man to the argument of why XRPers would use DeFi. Andy and I, we come from this yield farming DeFi summer 2020 background. So we're intimately aware of, all of the opportunities that DeFi making assets, productive assets. We're very familiar with that. What's the argument? Why wouldn't you use DeFi? To me, squeezing some extra yield, turning these things into productive assets, it's a no-brainer. Why? What was the counter argument? Why were people suggesting that?
The counter argument was that the XRP army, as they're colloquially called, are just going to hodl. And I think that's I think there's a very good percentage of the XRP army that are just going to hodl. But there's two things that massively go in our favor. One, you've never been able to get yield on the asset, and they've gotten burnt from things like Celsius. So they are looking for a DeFi opportunity. So large amounts of XRP were lost by Celsius, together with other coins, but specifically it really hurt the XRP community. Flare is the DeFi offering for XRP, and then secondly, I think at the time. Venture capitalists, when we were starting, which was 2018, venture capitalists really thought that XRP wasn't going to stick around. And in fact, quite the opposite. It has stuck around, and in fact, it's gone up from where it was, let's say, 2 years ago. So I think we hopefully, having stood the course and the test of time, we're in the right place.
What do you think about the XRP ETF being one of the biggest ETF launches ever? It just broke this Solana ETF record of like 2 weeks ago.
Well, if ETF trading is related to market cap, which suppose there must be some correlation. It's no surprise that it did. I think that, one of the things that XRP has in its favor is it has a slightly older population, a slightly older community, which means most of those people actually do trade stocks and bonds, or they have retirement accounts, right? So therefore, they're likely to be ETF buyers, perhaps more so than crypto native buyers. For instance, I personally don't have an ETF account.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're looking at the demographic of the audience for XRP, it makes complete sense that they're going to be more aligned with those ETFs than some of the other ecosystems. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Hugo, was Firelight, which seems to also be expanding the opportunities for XRP DeFi. This is a recent advent. Maybe you could give us some insight into Firelight and how you guys may be aligned.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Firelight is an XRP, let's call it staking protocol on Flare, and they exist from a request for proposals that we put out. Effectively, we looked at the Ethereum ecosystem and other ecosystems, and we noticed that the base asset that most things are operating in is actually the staked asset. Because people want to be able to borrow against something that's earning, right? They want to be able to, lock up an asset that's earning yield in order to get another asset that they can earn yield from. And having this productive staked asset is, a really beneficial aspect of being a proof of stake chain. Now, obviously, XRP does not have proof of stake, and there's no natural yield for XRP. So we wanted something that was as close to as possible to that. And of course, people like Eigenlayer and the others have come along and been like, oh, well, you can stake this asset to secure other chains. Hasn't really worked out. Just the market's not there. They've pivoted, right? So the idea of staking to these other services, the market's not big enough. There's not enough size for it. So Firelight is effectively building a coverage protocol in order to effectively cover risk across DeFi on whatever chain, Flare, Ethereum, Solana, whatever chain. And so whereas all the other staking models focus purely on yield, and rely on a validator set to exist, Firelight kind of inverts that model. The staked FXRP, which is our version of XRP, the XRP that is bridged to Flare, FXRP, is pooled as collateral to use to underwrite essentially smart contract, economic, oracle, and bridge risks. So the coverage and payouts, are predefined and not subjective, and independent assessments within Firelight remove, centralized decision making. It allows people to deposit to whichever Firelight pool they're interested in, which particular coverage they want to do. So this moves staking from trusting protocol to more of an on-chain risk framework.
Got it. And a lot of the value in DeFi comes with respect to Bitcoin and ETH, maybe some more familiar assets to our audience, comes from the collateralization element. It comes from Bitcoin being, some very, bulletproof collateral, and ETH the same thing, except ETH has, a native yield. What would you say is XRP's strongest value proposition when it comes to its place in DeFi?
I mean, what we want to pioneer is that collateral usage, right? We want people to stake their XRP in Firelight, get a yielding asset out, and then take it to a lending protocol and borrow against it. That's effective, or a perps protocol, on chain, and use that to trade markets. So I think it's broadly the same, the same use case. It's just applying it to an asset that now has been around for 12 years, is consistently in the top 5, and has extremely broad liquidity. So, there's no reason, if you look at it as a pure asset, why it shouldn't have the same collateral use case. We just want to be the people to bring that to market.
Yeah. Do you guys have like a regulatory policy strategy at Flare? Ripple's really came and dominated a lot of the kind of policy and a lot of the regulatory actions and getting into contact with the right people. How do you kind of think about the new environment with regards to your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, we're just waiting for it to unfold. We have a few irons in the fire. I think we are very, very, as an entity, decentralized, as a chain, extremely decentralized. We've always been extremely careful to err on the side of caution with regards to any statements we make, so as to not, inspire the wrong kind of attention. Our policy is basically, so we're decentralization maximalists. That's why we built an oracle into the chain itself, as opposed to buying an off-the-shelf oracle with a small, very small validator set. We try to stay as far away from policy as possible. That's we try to be as insulated as possible. That said, it's not always feasible. But we make sure that we're in accordance with all the regulations and all that kind of stuff. You'll see on almost all of our tweets, because I'm British, nothing applies to the UK. So who knows how this is going to work out. It's a very it's a nice time in the US for crypto. I really, really hope it remains that way.
Yeah, we certainly believe so. The administration has been putting together regulation, and this in theory, would put a halt to the Wild West, but it feels like now the industry is uniting around America. What would you say is kind of the biggest roadblock for you guys, whether it's regulatory or engineering? What's on the roadmap that you're still trying to focus on unlocking the next pillar of DeFi? Is it more interoperability, more engineering, trying to unlock more assets? What do you think is going to take the 50 million XRP that's already been bridged to Flare and increase that tenfold?
Okay, so I think those are two different questions, because if you don't mind,
Sure.
just because I think what will increase XRP, the 50 million that's been bridged, is now 60. I'm quite glad to say. What will increase that 10 times? Firelight will increase that by 10x. Like, Firelight is built for scale. If you look at insurance markets, they're 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, right? We can take 30, 40, 50 billion dollars of XRP in order to insure and in order to give cover to those markets. So it's really built for scale, and because XRP has no native yield, just being able to give some yield back is valuable. Getting that staked representation and then putting that into the Flare ecosystem to maybe borrow against that staked representation and do more with your money, I think that grows to multiple billions already. Some of the hurdles there are where are the pools of XRP? So you have a big retail pool, but you also have a huge amount of retail that are holding their XRP at custodians and exchanges. So onboarding exchanges, it has been pretty critical for us. That's a process we're very comfortable with where we are. So I think there'll be a number of exchanges participating in Firelight, first of which is already announced, called Uphold. And then really making the experience as easy as possible for retail with smart wallets. That is critical. So smart wallets allow a XRP user to only ever make transactions on the XRP ledger. They never need to come to Flare. So they can bridge their XRP to Flare and direct where that XRP goes on Flare without ever touching Flare. Just because we have data protocols that can read a memo field on the XRP ledger, so we can basically abstract away all of the complexity of using Flare, and that's coming hopefully in December. That combined with the wallets that work on the XRP ledger, to me, I think that's a huge unlock, because getting people to come from XRP into the EVM ecosystem, which is what Flare is really, really tough. In terms of where I think DeFi goes, which was the other part of the question, I think we've seen a lot of problems with vaults. With vault curators, how they're structured. I think we will see. I think that's the regulatory hammer that will come down. That actually is the bit that I think is going to be the next bad thing in our industry, which is that if you look at how vaults are curated, it's very, very hard to say that that is not fund management.
Right.
And I think one of the things I've been very keen on emphasizing is that we want the vaults that are on Flare to pretty much do everything on chain, and for those to be enforced by smart contract. I'd like to go further, and I'd like to build verifiable compute to make sure that effectively a user subscribes to a risk model, and the vault cannot do anything beyond that risk model. That to me is like, okay, so now I'm just subscribing to an algorithm that sits in a verifiable layer, and I'm subscribing to effectively an algorithm from a curator that is already in existence. So the curator does not make independent decisions on an hour-by-hour basis. It's all done by algorithm. That abstracts away the whole thing, and then you're just subscribing to data, and that's a totally different deal.
Yeah. We saw what recently happens when you unleash an ecosystem. We're friends with the guys over at Near. They launched their Intense product, and it helped open up this entire Zcash world. And now Zcash has been on a tremendous tear. And so if anything is similar in the XRP ecosystem, unleashing this, connecting it with EVM, pretty much opening the gates of capital and liquidity to flow in and out of this ecosystem is, in a really good opportunity to open up and really see how things unfold. Hugo, I think we're running short on time. I'm curious, just any closing thoughts on your end. I can also see how a lot staking ETFs are gaining in popularity. Solana staking ETF went live. There's no native yield, but you guys at Flare, would be the venue to generate some yield on XRP. And I could see a major partnership with some sort of ETF provider providing that yield. Any things or plans like this, any alpha you can share to wrap us up?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely interested in getting there. I think getting getting regulators around the hurdle of it's not native yield, it's coming from risk. Even though there is risk in staking, right? Like let's be absolutely clear. There's risk in staking, but it's a different type of risk, right? So I think we'll get there. It's definitely on the roadmap. But it's going to be a lot of work with the regulators that matter there. Closing thoughts. Just watch it unfold. Hopefully, it'll unfold in a positive manner. And we're launching Flare 2.0, which is pretty much all about verifiable compute. Mid next year. So I think that'll be quite interesting. That's when I think we can start really, really upgrading the way vaults are managed in the industry.
Love it.
I mean, that off-chain opaque vault management is just not going to work long term. So
yeah, I want it to be all algorithmic, all autonomous, and all verifiable.
Yep. Hugo, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks
wish
so much.
you the best. We are entering what Rob calls the Goldilocks era of crypto. So strap in, brother.
Nice to meet you.
Cheers, likewise. Man. We'll see you soon. Cheers,
thanks.
Brother.
Bye.
Man, and it is pretty nuts that Ripple, like the XRP ETF, was one of the biggest ever. Like I mean, it actually just surpassed Solana as being the biggest ever.
Right. For the day one trading volume.
Yeah. Which is pretty impressive.
It shows that there's still a bid out there, right?
Of course. So I think we got Summer next, CEO of Blockchain Association. She is ready. She's in the back. This should be a good one. They've been doing a lot of work in the market structure build, the Genius Act. They've been talking a lot about clarity. Generally, they've had some new partners join their team. So excited to chat with them and chat with Summer and kind of get an update as to where we're at here. I think a lot of people in the market are trying to figure out, the ETAs on the market structure bill and just generally where this, like what the next step for the US government is. And so looking forward to having that kind of conversation. So yeah, Rob.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked because we've heard a lot about this. Clarity is definitely going to. I think it's going to just further clarify. Literally, it's Clarity Act. Define the rules of the road. People are going to come back to the U.S. and they're going to understand what they have to do in order to capitalize on this business opportunity. Um, Also, there's going to be beneficiaries of this regulation. Like, we see a lot of bull market warriors come across our desk. These are guys that are, usually pretty crypto native, but they're building something that it's not full, in my opinion, it's not fully realizing the opportunity at hand, which is this institutional cycle that we see playing out before our eyes, 2026 and beyond. It's significant capital markets entering the ecosystem, thinking about tokenization. They need clear rules of the road. And for someone who's not building with the Clarity Act and this regulation in mind, I just don't think that they're fully realizing the opportunity here.
Agreed. So let's get summer up and let's get this show on the road. Looking forward to having and kind of a continuation of some of the policy conversations that we had at SmartCon last week. That was a really, really high quality event. We got to speak to Cody from the Digital Chamber.
Yeah.
We got to speak to some Adam, Chainlink's head of policy. So yeah, looking forward to catching up. Guys, I think we're just having a little bit of tech difficulties here.
Yeah.
I think we're up and good.
So the regulatory landscape is shifting. I do think that there's going to be a big push to get Clarity Act in before the midterms. Arthur Hayes mentioned this during our conversation a couple of times, and generally, this is something that is such an important piece of this industry. We're just going to have an easier time pushing it through with a very aligned Congress. I do enjoy, even though there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of like red tape, and it kind of feels like we're getting further and further away from the code is law, test and prod, basically just ship code, and that's what matters. As we get into businesses that are a little bit more like touch and go, this becomes more and more necessary. So it's just, we've seen how this industry evolves, and it's interesting to see how as we get into bigger capital markets, we end up shifting the goalposts almost, or shifting like the entry points of this capital. Like what brings in the next $1 trillion asset manager. It's not necessarily like, obviously we need Lindy protocols, we need smart contract audits, we need all of this, but the aura of safety and security is what they want, right? They want the financial security and insulation that we talk about. And the thing that gives them that sense of security is quite a bit different than like early on what gave us that sense of security.
Right, exactly. And it's actually, yeah, I mean, there's a long conversation here about kind of the crypto ethos, being taken away,
Mm.
and people being upset about that, and just generally like where they stand on that. And that being a reason why a lot of these OGs are kind of fleeing the space, and people realizing that, they built all this infrastructure, spent all this money to build all this infrastructure, and that a lot of these just institutional folks are just going to come and deploy it. I saw a tweet. It was like crypto has spent, billions of dollars building infrastructure, but very little actually deploying it, which effectively kind of just means apps. And that was particularly kind of alarming.
Now, I remember a conversation that we had with a woman at FIS Global, one of
Mm,
the largest financial institutions, and we talked to her, I think it was back in 23, maybe it was early 24.
yeah.
So, quite a long time before this institutional wave really arrived. And
Mhm.
one of the things that she said that stuck with me was that her company and other companies like hers own the relationship. They own the end user relationship in
Right.
the sense that there's consumer behavior and there's a Schelling point and a Lindy effect to their brand. End users trust their brand. And so when we're thinking about deploying this infrastructure, you know, is it enough to say that, we have the plumbing and the pipes are all kind of like the crypto native smart contracts? We're not necessarily going to get these customers off of FIS Global or off of BlackRock or off of Janus Henderson.
Right. Exactly.
They already have the consumer behavior and the trust that is built into their brands. So they're going to continue to own that, right? But in the back end, they're going to use crypto native infrastructure. Maybe they acquire it, they incorporate it deeper into their own offering, or maybe they partner, right? And they use this infrastructure as a software as a service model. But what I hear in that tweet you mentioned is like that's not enough, right?
Mm,
Like we need to build our own front ends, our own applications, and serve those to the end users to really fully develop this stack. I don't think it has to work out that way. I think we can kind of build the infrastructure that exists behind the scenes, and the industry can still do quite well.
yeah.
But I
Sandra
guess
says, great
just to
live show. Good work, guys. Thanks, Sandra.
Thanks, Sandra. Last thing I'll say about that is that that is a fat protocol thesis, right? And
Mm,
there's a counterpoint and an alternative fat application thesis that would be the counter to my argument there.
yeah. Yep. Interesting. Well, we gotta deploy this infrastructure that we've built, or else it's gonna get deployed for us. And that's kind of like I think the big takeaway there.
Yeah, I guess my thing is I don't think getting it deployed for us, as long as it's being deployed, it's still implementing a better system. I don't think it's so bad. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have others deploy it for us.
Yep. Yep.
So Summer's going to join us. There's still regulatory work, policy work to be done. It
Oh yeah.
feels like this is one of the number one priorities for the U.S. government, which is pretty incredible.
It is. It is definitely one of the number one priorities.
Andy, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What do you think Mom Donnie's crypto policy is?
Oh my gosh. Man, I don't even know.
I'm gonna
What
pull
do
up
you
I don't know. I'm gonna ask it. I am curious what you think, but I'm gonna ask the chat in the meantime.
what do we think Mamdani's crypto policy is? He's
Just
probably for
because
it, to be honest. Actually, no, he's probably so against it. He's probably so against it. I changed my mind. I think he sees it as probably just like this capitalistic way of people to make all this money and Trump, et cetera. I bet he's against it. But he's not gonna be able to do anything.
I just
So
think what Mamdani shows is that there is a uprising of um, like socialist policies and just socialist vibes in the air, which I think is only a natural counterweight to the current administration. Um, and so I expect that there's Mamdani, but then others are going to follow suit. Like we're going to get more Mamdanis, and you
mm,
already see AOC getting even further into Mamdani's camp. Bernie Sanders is like endorsing him, and they're almost abandoning whatever it was that their Democratic Party line was beforehand. They're
yep,
kind of like they see the strength of Mamdani's campaign, and they're going and they're now articulating and verbalizing and spreading a lot of the same messaging. And so I kind of see how they're going to coalesce into whatever this new Democratic Party is going to be. And I'm just trying to think like Mamdani seems to be a leader of that new wave. I'm just curious, like what the Democrats' stance on crypto would be. And I think whatever Mamdani's stance on crypto is gonna be reflected in the Democrats' positioning when it comes to crypto. I just asked ChatGPT. I mean, apparently Mamdani was a sponsor or co-sponsor of a bill on proof of work if it used on-site energy generation. So they're still hung up on like environmental protection for proof of work coins. Emphasize consumer protection in crypto, especially pointing out that when crypto companies collapse, it isn't the rich who suffer, it's small investors who disproportionately come from low income and communities of color. He has not publicly espoused a pro-crypto growth agenda. Rather, his views suggest more regulation, especially around environmental impacts and investor risk. Pretty interesting.
I think ChatGPT is just gonna basically, you could also tell it, all right, think like a left wing, think like a right wing, go. And it'll have its own crazy takes as well.
Yeah. I
You know
kind of
what I
just
mean?
use it. That's certainly true. It does have come up with crazy takes. I kind of just use it as search engine now. Like to me, it's like I want to know what Mamdani's actually said out there. And it can just it can pull from multiple sources at once. And I do like how now it gives you the source, right? It'll give you a bulleted list, and then each bullet has like where it has a link with where it came from.
Yeah, which is nice. I mean, I do not use Google anymore. I just use like chat basically.
Yeah. If I use Google, it's usually Gemini giving me something. It's not like I click on any of the links. I just like to know that there is a link back there somewhere.
Right. All right. Well, we've got Summer in the back. Summer, if you want to get your cam on, and you can unmute here in the back, we'd love to bring you up. And yeah, let's get the show on the road.
Yeah, we're gonna figure out how to bring Summer up here. Just figuring out the platform on our end. You know, I saw something on our run of show today. This is episode 82 of Rollup TV. And so to think that we're still figuring it out after 82 episodes is we've come a long way. We've still got a long way to go. What else we got going on? We got Marcelo in here now as well. Hopefully he can pull some godlike powers. I'm just gonna espouse my market perspective.
Yeah, please
in
do.
In case anyone cares, and in case we still are trying to get Summer up.
Yeah,
you know,
man.
Bitcoin's
Rob,
at
give
90.
give us your market perspective, please.
Sure. So Bitcoin's at 95.8. I think 100K kind of flipped from support to resistance. We tapped it quite a few times. Now that we're under it, I do think we're going to have a little bit of trouble breaking back above it. But my thing is, look, we're still in a bull market. I think Bitcoin can go down. Look, Bitcoin, ETH, HYPE, and very few other coins are things that, as long as you don't use leverage and you just use spot, to me, it's like, if you can preserve some capital on the way down, great. But rather than trying to time the market, you don't have to try to time the market. You just pick the direction, and we know the direction is up and to the right. And so to me, yeah, Bitcoin maybe, sweeps the low 90s, gets into like the yearly open, maybe gets into the high 80s. But rather than selling on the way down, my thesis has always been, look, get some cash flow and buy at those lower levels, right? So rather than sell and buy, try to time the market that way and potentially get caught off sides, just make sure you have some cash on hand for the dips and just buy the dip and hold everything else. I think repeatedly, time and time again, we've seen holders are the ones that end up doing well. And so to me, I haven't, we don't use leverage, don't sell any spot, just, persevere. Uh, and to me, as long as Trump's in office, as long as we've got positive regulation coming down the pipeline, we're still in a bull market, even if we get down to, 69, 420, 70s, 80s, just put some cash aside, buy the dip. And inevitably, they're going to turn the money printer on. They always do. It's the only option that they have. So when they turn the money printer on, you buy the dip and you're in a good spot.
All eyes are on Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy. Did you see Michael Saylor's post today?
I heard him refuting claims that he sold.
Did you see the post of the Titanic going down and him in a lifeboat?
Yes.
Hoddle. He's in a lifeboat and the Titanic is sinking. It's pretty wild. Brother, I'm not sure a sinking ship in flames is the right image here. 4 million views.
Nice. Look, Arthur, hey, I'm a big fan of Arthur. You know that. And I think he made a great point, which is basically like, look, the counter thesis would be, we've got summer coming up. Just to close that thought, the counter thesis would be if you ever hear politicians talking about austerity, talking about, washing a lot of the dirty debt out of the cycle, trying to clean things up, that's when you're, potentially going to see a credit squeeze. But we're not seeing that. We're talking about handouts and tariff checks and all these kinds of things. So to me, that's money printer on. That's great for Bitcoin. Also, positive regulation is fueling this next wave, the institutional cycle in 2026. I think Summer is going to be able to speak to that. She played a significant role in Genius and all the regulation. We appreciate her patience behind the scene. I think we're going to try to make it quick and blitz through a lot of topics. Let's bring Summer up and have a chat. Summer, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
It is 2025 is the year of blockchain and crypto regulation. You're sitting in a very unique position to kind of oversee and have a unique vantage point for all that has happened. So honestly, it would just be very helpful for the context of the conversation to understand a bit more about that vantage point. What does your kind of day-to-day, week-to-week look like as a CEO at Blockchain Association? Who do you work with? What types of projects are you guys working on? It would be cool for our audience to get a bit of a lay of the land.
Absolutely. Let me tell you a little bit about Blockchain Association. We're the unifying voice for the digital asset industry in Washington, D.C., working with policymakers to ensure that any policy that comes from the federal government recognizes the importance of the innovation in this space and ensures that we can continue to move forward and innovate within the industry. Day to day, we work a lot with Capitol Hill right now, certainly in the United States Senate, where they're working to draft a bill that's similar to the House passed Clarity Act. We also work very closely with the administration, closely with the White House, who's also very interested in getting market structure legislation done. And then Treasury and some of the financial regulators like the SEC, CFTC, who are all working on regulatory efforts to help this industry. And specifically on the Genius Act, Treasury is working to have some rulemakings to implement that legislation.
Incredible. You mentioned the Clarity Act. This is something that we've heard a lot about, we've seen a lot about, we've talked a lot about on this show. I'm curious, what is the biggest sticking point that's left in the Clarity Act to push it through without getting into timelines? We know, 2026 is coming up. The government just reopened. Democrats are pushing for consumer protection, but what exactly is it about consumer protection that we're still looking to clarify?
There's a lot of questions around anti-money laundering and know your customer. I think there's some misunderstanding or lack of education on the fact that a lot of that is already done, especially when you think of the on-ramps and off-ramps to whether it's DeFi or to these exchanges, those processes are done. So I think we've got to better educate some of the Democrat members so they understand that these aren't the concerns that we should be worried about. These aren't the customer protections that we should be worried about. We should be thinking about disclosures and making sure the customers have all the information they need. Another sticking point that we're really focused on is making sure that there are developer protections, that we're not setting up a situation where a protocol, people who are issuing protocol, people who are writing code somehow become liable when their code or their protocol is used in a way that used in a way that's not legal. It's the idea is that those are true developers. They're not exchanges. They're not custodying the money, so they really shouldn't be held liable for certain activities on those protocols.
Got it. Very cool. I also, have been keeping track of you guys, and Blockchain Association has been doing some great work in DC and beyond. You recently had Kristen Smith and Rebecca Rettig join the team. I'm just curious how you're looking at the institutional strategy moving forward into 2026. How do you anticipate that the strategy is going to evolve now that tokenization has come front and center? Tell us a little bit about what it was like back then and what you anticipate the strategy is going to be going forward.
Yeah, if you look at just even a less than a year ago, just the beginning of 2020, beginning of 2025, end of 2024, it was a very different posture for the association and our member companies. That was kind of the end of the Biden administration. There was a time of regulation to enforcement, almost a witch hunt going on at the time. And now we've pivoted to a very pro-crypto administration, Congress that has heavy bipartisan support and interest in this, in the crypto and the industry and blockchain technology. And so really where we're strategizing or where we're headed is making sure that whatever framework is put into place, that it protects innovation and sets up a regime where these markets, especially those that have been overseas, come back into the U.S. and kind of, to the president's point, the U.S. truly does become the capital of crypto for the world.
Got it. I was asking Andy actually before you jumped on, while we were getting you set up. We were in New York for SmartCon last week. Coincidentally, Mamdani and the mayoral race was happening at the same time, and it just made me think that the crypto voter is a rather independent, single issue voter. And I think maybe a lot of crypto people that are left actually voted for Trump because of his crypto policies. And Democrats may adapt and adjust their crypto policy as to not lose this constituency. What do you think is Mamdani's crypto campaign, but more broadly, the Democrats' crypto campaign going forward into the midterms? You mentioned there's bipartisan support in Congress now. How do you think the Democrats are going to reshape their crypto policy into the midterms and beyond?
Yeah, they need to look at this as an opportunity, not as some kind of concern for illegal activity. I think a lot of times there's this focus on, again, the anti-money laundering, illicit finance, and that was kind of the lens that a lot of Democrats had been looking at the industry through. Now they recognize that there's a lot of opportunity here. The innovators, these are the new small businesses of the economy. They really are going to be drivers of the economy. And at the end of the day, a lot of this technology allows more people to access financial services and gives people more freedom over their finances. And I think those are really important for the Democrat Party, something that they've always been very interested in. And so I think they're starting to recognize that they have to see where the average voter is going, and the fact that they want to be in the space, they want some control over their own finances, and that this really is good for the economy, good for society, and really going to improve financial inclusion across the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it seems like it's been an issue that notably the new administration has really taken on as like a spotlight of their entire regime and policy. So, you could argue that the Republicans are pushing this forward, but I think, again, as Rob mentioned, I think a lot of us, especially on the younger side, we're just single issue voters. It's like if you're not going to support this technology, then we don't really care. I would say like the majority of crypto people are probably middle left, actually, in terms of their republic or their political stance. But again, I think in this previous election, it was pretty obvious that Biden's campaign kind of fumbled the bag per se with regards to their crypto policy. Kamala didn't really have something. She didn't really have a stance. And, I think Trump had came out and basically said, we're going to make America the crypto and AI capital of the world. And so it's really interesting because there's a lot of reasons why this younger kind of generation has a completely different outlook on politics and on the state of affairs. Notably, growing up in the social media era completely changes like the mental structure of people's thought processes and just generally what they care about. I think something that a lot of us are kind of thinking about is how DeFi is kind of still facing scrutiny in Washington, D.C. It's still kind of difficult to understand the future of this specific, decentralized finance world with regards to its adoption. I'm curious kind of like what you're hearing, from Congress, or what kind of practical safeguards, consumer protection ideas. Basically what I'm trying to get to is like you mentioned that we don't want to outlaw open protocols and open protocol design. The Tornado Cash guy, Roman Storm, he's been through hell and back because of his privacy protocol. How do we prevent developers and entrepreneurs from facing scrutiny going forward? And what is actually happening to further enable innovation?
Yeah, and it is a good question. If you look back kind of throughout history as technology new technology has come onto the scene, we really have been a country that's protected the technology providers, protected the innovators, and held the bad actors accountable for the bad actions that they're taking. So, I think again, this is kind of an education process. It's the same thing. I kind of go way back and use the example of, we didn't hold Ford and the Model T liable for bank robbers. Why would we kind of have a similar, position when it comes to developers and the protocol issuers and developers and technology? So I think it's just trying to get people to realize this isn't just because this is new. It doesn't mean that we have to approach it in a whole new way. That we need to make sure that we are providing proper protection. And I think the other piece of this is getting people to understand, if we don't have a good environment here in the U.S., if we don't allow this here in the U.S., it's just going to move offshore. And that is to me, absolutely not what we want. We want these markets. We want this innovation. We want these developers in the U.S. operating in the U.S. and able to do what the president has asked, which is let's make this the crypto capital of the world.
I agree. I mean, that is like what we don't want. And fortunately for the U.S., I think because of the stance of the new administration, we kind of, I mean, it's clear that the U.S. is the hub of crypto. It's also clear that New York City is the crypto capital of the world. You can't even argue that. The amount of development on the institutional front that we saw last week there was absolutely fantastic. Just a couple more things for you. I think we're coming up on time with some tech stuff. You guys have been doing a ton of these member listening tours within the Blockchain Association. What is the single most consistent pain point you've heard from founders, entrepreneurs, policymakers that are trying to navigate U.S. compliance? Is it around the same issue that we've kind of been orbiting, or is there something else that there's a consistent pain point that you guys are looking to alleviate?
I think a lot of it comes down to just regulatory clarity. So there are a number of products and markets that people are ready to bring onshore. I use the example of perpetuals a lot. That is, offshore activity that really should be in the U.S. and under U.S. regulators. And so the members really would like to see some clarity built around that. What can we do? How do we make sure that we are following the rules? And same with, a lot of the things going on at the SEC, it really is just providing clarity. It's not necessarily changing rules. It's just explaining this is how we view it. These are the rules and this is how it applies to what you're doing. So that's what we hear a lot. And, part of the reason people want market structure is that will give a lot of clarity, but they also recognize there's a number of things that the administration can do now to provide that clarity to people who are innovating here in the U.S.
You guys have, building on the member listening towards, you guys have a policy summit that's happening in December. What are your goals? What are you hoping comes out of this summit?
Yeah, I'm hoping that our members get a real sense of where Washington is at this current moment, where policymakers are, what they're trying to accomplish, how we can be helpful. I think that's the other big piece to this is we've got a major industry here with a lot of energy, and how do we take that and really be productive on the side of getting legislation clarity, making sure that we set up a system where if the administration changes over in 3 years, we're not back to the Gary Gensler world here. So I think a lot of it is, hearing from those policymakers about what they are working on and having them help us better focus our energy to make sure we're doing what we need to do as an industry to get to the end game and make those goals happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big concern of a lot of us. Is like we do all this work for 4 years straight, and then we just go right back to it.
Yeah. I'm curious actually how you're thinking about this inside of the legislation in DC, because from my vantage point, I'm not as in the loop as you and the members, but it seems there's two main adversaries. There's the Democrats that are trying to hold up the regulation, the Clarity Act specifically. And then there's the banking lobby who are trying to hold up a lot of the innovation when it comes to stable coins and DeFi. And this is kind of a three-headed beast because the Democrats and the banking lobby aren't aligned politically from what you hear, right? So how is it a similar strategy that you're taking to kind of work on both of these groups at the same time? How are you trying to navigate this landscape so that we can continue to march forward on our goals? How difficult has it been to work with or against each of these two groups, the banking lobby and the Democrats?
Yeah, I think the Democrats who maybe have not been as friendly to crypto, I think a lot of that is just us getting to them and explaining what it means to issue a digital asset, what these markets are about, who owns, who has these holdings. I think that when we start to explain to them, like, these are your voters, these are your constituents, that helps. Another thing that we often try to explain is that we're pro-consumer. This is what consumers want. This is the financial services kind of framework that consumers want. And so I think that helps. And we really do see shifts from certain kind of pockets of political ideology as you start to focus on the fact that this is a pro-consumer market and that we want to have pro-consumer protections. On the side of the bank lobby, they've been around for a long time. They've been very powerful in this city for a long time. And I actually think this is the first time that they've really had to go toe to toe with another industry or another, type of another group that maybe doesn't agree with the way they're approaching things. We're really pushing back, whether it's on letters that they write to the administration around rulemaking, some of the press that they've put out. They've put out some letters against a number of industry players who are applying for OCC charters. And so our job is to push back, get the facts out there, help people understand that this is nothing more than protectionist activity, that most of these issues, the banks could very well compete, and they just don't want to. And that's really the kind of the message we're trying to get to people, and we're on the side of the consumers. I say that all the time. That's what we have going for us, is we are on the side of consumers. That's what we care about. And if you look at what the banks are saying, it does not feel pro-consumer at all.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these groups, most of them, if not all of them, would say they're pro-consumer, but you got to look at their actions rather than their words, right? We believe in innovation. We believe in technology, empowering people with these tools safely, of course. We've seen, things happen, but if we can give people these tools safely, then it really feels like the best of both worlds. This is also fascinating. We don't hear too much about what it's like on the inside, working between these lobbyist groups. Could you just tell, like, how does this work? Are you essentially competing to influence the lawmakers? Is that really the objective here?
Yeah, to a certain extent, it's a messaging game, getting the right message out there, whether it's to the lawmakers or even to the public who are the constituents of these lawmakers, making sure that they have the right narrative. And so a lot of times it becomes a little bit of a media war to a certain extent. So there's that piece to it, but there's also the piece where we have to be, whether it's on Capitol Hill or meeting with the administration, we need to be in the policymakers' ears, explaining our viewpoint, making sure they understand, making sure they know that this is about their constituents. And so it's a lot of being on Capitol Hill, doing a lot of meetings, talking to staff, talking to White House staff, talking to Treasury and OCC and other agencies, making sure they understand that, where we're coming from and the support we have behind us. So it is kind of a two-front fight. One of it is, kind of in the press and media, and the other is on the ground. We call it shoe leather lobbying. It's like going door to door and just making your case to the various policymakers and whoever, sometimes that's what it takes, is just the hard work that people are willing to put into it. And our industry is not afraid of hard work at all.
Yeah, and I take it some of those lawmakers are maybe more open-minded than others. Others, they might say, "Hey, what's in it for me? What's in it for my constituents?" Right? And are those normally when you knock on their door and say, "Hey, this cool crypto thing, I'm sure you've heard about it. I want to tell you more about it." What's the reaction?
There's a lot of questions about, help me understand this. I think we're still at that stage where we are doing a ton of education. We've done a number of Crypto 101 briefings on Capitol Hill, and we usually have a full house of staff who are just trying to understand the technology. So there's that. There are those who are very open and want to work with us and actually want to get more involved in a positive way. And then we find there are a certain number of members who will say, well, I've heard that this is just another way to for money laundering, or I've heard that this is, how illicit finance happens. And so again, that's an educational opportunity to explain, here's the safeguards that are in place. By the way, the most commonly used illicit finance mechanism is cash. Mm-hmm. And having things on the blockchain actually provides a lot of transparency that doesn't exist elsewhere in the financial services sector. So it really is, kind of educating in two different areas. One is just from the start, what is this technology? Why is it important? And then the other is trying to debunk some of the misconceptions that have been planted within a number of, a number of policymakers, kind of planted in their heads almost, that we have to combat and push back against.
Yeah. And honestly, I think there's blame to be had here on, the kind of SBF FTX debacle as well, right? Like, I'm sure people that you speak to have this in their mind as something that happened to them, or, somebody that they knew, or one of these debacles from 2022. It's just hard to overestimate how much, the Gensler FTX kind of combination set the industry back, not only from an actual adoption and innovation perspective, but just from a perception perspective as well.
Yeah, I was at the CFTC when the FTX collapse, and we had actually part of their business was a CFTC regulated entity, and it's interesting. The regulated entity was the only one where it was fine. It came out of bankruptcy ahead. We knew where all the money was. There was no way to commit fraud on that particularly regulated entity. So it kind of was a good demonstration of why it is important to have some regulation in this space, but there was it definitely led to a lot of mistrust. What I try to tell people is that was just fraud. That was not anything that, yeah, it was crypto market, but that was just traditional run of the mill fraud that occurred. And that can happen anywhere, anytime. And the best thing to do is to have federal oversight to put some of those safeguards in place that make it a lot harder to commit fraud on, millions of people.
Yeah. Summer, last
Totally
question
agree.
for you before we let you go. I was reading through Paul Atkins's statement about this token taxonomy. And he mentions Mike Seelig is coming into the CFTC. Still got to get confirmed. But, this is starting to take shape, especially as clarity becomes more and more defined as well. It seems that we're pushing the oversight from the SEC more into the CFTC. Is that the right way to think about it? And just coming from your experience at the CFTC, what would that mean for the asset class for it to be regulated by the CFTC rather than the SEC?
Well, the majority of these assets are not securities. So I always start with the fact that, listen, the majority of this, 99% are commodities. They are not securities at all. And so it makes complete sense that the CFTC should be the frontline regulator here. Yes, there are going to be times where a token looks like a security, or we could be talking about tokenized securities. That jurisdiction, of course, still sits with the SEC, but for the bulk of what we're talking about, it falls at the CFTC naturally. And so you are seeing this kind of push to make sure that you get the right leadership, a pro-innovator chairman, which Mike Seelig is, getting the right leadership in, and then working closely with the SEC. I think the two agencies really have to work hand in hand, because there are these issues where you could have tokens transform, one starting as a security and then becoming more of a commodity in the secondary market. So I think it's really good to see that the SEC is so kind of out there and up front and getting out ahead of a lot of these issues. I think you'll see the same thing continue with the CFTC, and with Seelig and his relationship with Atkins and coming from the crypto task force, that just means they're going to be able to work very closely together and try to make this as seamless as possible for the industry moving forward.
Summer, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
These conversations just further reinforce our belief that 2025 is just line in the sand type of year, where following this, it's really going to be a different asset class, a different industry, a more legitimized, mature, and just generally, wider distribution of token holders, of informants, and of policymakers and important people shaping the future. So we appreciate your efforts in this industry as well.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely. Fun. Love to have you on again sometime soon. We'll see you next time.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Alrighty. Up next, we have Franklin from Pantera and Addy of Rialo. And we will be talking about the RWA tokenization Rialo thesis, amongst other kind of general topics with regards to Rialo and the idea of a real world asset-based blockchain. Rob, how can you leave that conversation and not be bullish?
That's what I've been trying to tell you, man. It is perma bull season. Look, we can get down. We could have 6 months of negative price action, chop. People get super frustrated because it's not up and to the right. I don't care. I'm going to say it's a bull market the entire time, and I'm not selling. I'm just going to hold and buy, hold and buy.
Hold and buy and hold and buy and hold and buy.
And let it do its thing.
Okay.
Let it do its thing. Hold and buy. What else do you need to do? It's been the best performing asset class of the last 20 years. We know what happens. It is it is them printing money. It is the debasement trade. So we know exactly what's happening. And it's just a matter of staying patient and letting it play out. I'm pretty excited for our next chat. We've got Ade, we've got Franklin. These guys are legends.
Let's bring them up.
Let's bring them up. They've been getting set up behind the scenes. Pantera is obviously a legend of the game when it comes to the investment company. And
I think last time I spoke to Franklin, he was in Rio. Actually, no, that was not Franklin. That was a different Pantera legend. I think this is the first time. Franklin, nice to see you. Ade, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, all of us at Pantera, we wander the earth looking for great founders. So you probably met a few of us somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. We have. You guys have been great. Ade, we had a 2-hour meeting in Singapore where you sat me down and you said, this is everything that's wrong with blockchains. And this is how we're going to change it and make it better. And I imagine you probably had a similar conversation with Franklin and you sat him down and you said, look, this is what's possible.
Yes.
Maybe you could start by giving our audience a similar, not a 2, we don't have, I wish we had 2 hours for you to go into the details, but give our audience somewhat of a concise version of what, what you pitched Franklin and myself and generally how you were able to convince us.
Yeah. Nice to meet you all. Such an honor to be here. You guys are legends also. So
thank you.
Where do I start? I think part of what, and grateful to the Pantera folks for listening to me for more than 2 hours. But at the high level, we think blockchains today are great. Like they've done a good job given what what we had, what we knew, and everything evolves. We believe that as we're seeing more and more people wanting to come on chain, the fragility of the system starts to show its cracks, right? We're going to be that important when we designed Ethereum or Bitcoin. So these things are starting to show its cracks as we want to get more and more people on chain. So I believe that the base layer should continually evolve as the needs of the world grow. And just the same way smart contracts merged into Bitcoin then to become Ethereum, other components that are now table stakes should also merge into the base layer and become table stakes to enable the next generation, right? This used to be an old phone was just a call-in. Now we have cameras, we have all these features. Why don't we also do that with the base layer? I think it's going to enable the next generation of applications. So that's the high level. Yeah.
And guys, just a bit of context here for you, Franklin. Ade, we spent the last week in New York City with institutions of the likes of JP Morgan, DTCC, the Fed, the White House, Goldman. We had the CEO of the Digital Chamber on the show, Chainlink's head of policy, Sergey. And so there's this massive tokenization, real world asset bull run happening in New York City. And if you look on crypto Twitter and if you look anywhere else, it feels like we're in the depths of a deep bear market. But there's this bifurcation of realities happening. Yeah. It really feels like the wild, wild west in this kind of like tokenization, real world asset play. Franklin, pass it to you, kind of building on what Ade has brought to light here. Talk to us about kind of how you view this base layer transition happening with regards to how it kind of pertains to this institutional adoption phase, right? Because it's only happening once. The seats at the table are being set. The table is being set. How do we capitalize?
Yeah, the reason why I think Rialo is just going to where the puck is going is because what we're seeing right now with tokenization and stable coins, we're seeing JP Morgan, my former employer, and actually where I started my blockchain journey over 10 years ago, starting the blockchain team there and working on things like JPM Coin, is you're seeing that the current phase that we're in is still that part of the internet cycle where people were putting newspaper articles online, right? People aren't really thinking about how to issue crypto native assets yet. They're not really thinking about how to incorporate this into their actual workflows and bring their entire enterprise stack or financial workflow on chain. So even, with all the success that stablecoins have had, $250 billion on chain so far and, growing exponentially, that still is really just the first layer of the financial system, right? I mean, fintechs today, a lot of the traditional VCs are coming into crypto now with stablecoins as their first stop because that's what they understand, right? Payments is this massive TAM, but actually, the fact that we have Turing complete smart contracts means that we can go way beyond just payments, right? But for us to be able to serve that, we actually need to evolve beyond what today's blockchains can do, right? Everyone says that block space is commoditized and we have way more supply than demand, but I would actually argue that it looks commoditized because everyone's been building a commodity product, right? Where we actually need to go is we need more feature rich block space, right? So the surrounding functionality, all the ways that it integrates with the existing financial system, with existing applications, and the rest of Web 2, that's what's going to make it feature rich. And not only that, at the end of the day, blockchains have just one customer, right? It's not traders, it's not speculators, it's developers. And so, the moment that we met Ade and Lou, who are building Rialo, we realized, okay, these folks are keyed in on the developer experience, right? I actually met Ade, I'm not sure if he even remembers, like 4 years ago at some crypto party where one of our portfolio companies was trying to recruit him to come over from Netflix. And all I knew about him at the time was he was a superstar backend engineer, systems engineer, and he was kind of a crypto skeptic, right? He was trying to figure out, hey, what's really going on here? What can we actually build? Doesn't seem like it's all that great. And we were trying to convince him. And I think that's why he has such a good perspective on this, right? I mean, he's built real world applications that serve millions of users at scale. And he's looking at what's available to developers today and saying, that's not enough, right? I mean, even the JP Morgans of the world, they want to bring more of themselves, more of their whole selves to the on-chain economy, but they can't. They can just sort of get stuck today with just sort of simple transactions and payments, while the rest of their data and the rest of their workflows just doesn't have the space yet on-chain to really start to migrate.
So we've had this thesis through our technical kind of learnings over the last 18 months, let's say. Like the Rollup was very like modular. The future is a lot of chains, specialized block space, customized chains, purpose-built execution environments, tons of DA, huge amounts of experimentation for the sake of it. Let's lower the barrier entry and go. And it's played out in a fashion that has supported that thesis, but perhaps a little bit different than what we thought. You got like these stablecoin chains, you got these L1s, you've got a ton of different L2s that are like kind of like perp stexes now. You got the Hyperliquid. We all thought maybe it was going to be an Ethereum L2, but it ended up being kind of this weird L3 thing, L1. Now you got lighter. So like the thesis has played out, but we're still very, very early. We think in this thesis. Ade, from your perspective, what is this customized, product market fit-esque or purpose-built block space mean for this real-world thesis? Like, what technically and architecturally speaking are you guys looking to implement that will get you to a certain outcome? Talk us through the tech and then talk us through what outcome that enables.
It's a fantastic question. So the intuition for this came from me and my co-founder, Lou, we were both ex-Mistin early engineers. So I was one of the earliest engineers at Mistin Labs working on the Sui blockchain. So was Lou. Phenomenal place to work, probably one of the best places I ever worked. We learned a lot from there, and then we tried to build applications in the world and also learned a lot. And part of the thing, actually, it's something we're drawing, it's explaining to someone behind me here, is blockchains, the original design, were almost a rejection of Web 2. It was like, we're going to build our utopia over here. And if you want to do anything, you have to build yet another plumbing, Oracle, just to get data. Okay, two chains want to talk, a bridge, automation. So it was almost this thing that was designed like the cypherpunks wanted their own utopia. Now that we've realized distribution adoption are a key goal, now it's like, oh my God, these patterns we created are actually fighting us. We design distribution and connectivity as a core primitive. Everything in the world is behind some kind of API already. We've spent decades building that system in Web 2. You want to verify that a person's a human? You don't need to scan your eye with an orb in Web 2. There's systems in place. Like if I can check you have a FICO score and you have bank account and other things, I can get a very very solid chance that you're a person. Otherwise, you would never have gotten a FICO score, right? So when you have these connectivity and APIs as core primitives, all the plethora of things that already exist in the world can just be brought on chain and used to move the world ahead. You want to tokenize something, just point to where it's at. For example, Rialo doesn't use oracles because you don't need oracles if you can just implement the same feature of tracking data where it is. So the core primitive of connectivity just opens up the entire world. That is one of the things that we think is going to make real world assets extremely easy to implement. And we already have demos, but it goes even a step further. The other advantage is also distribution the other way, not just bringing data on chain, but also being able to connect to existing systems. If you ever try to get a Web2 company to come on chain, one of the biggest problems they face is the amount of plumbing they have to do. They need to now think about gas management, key management. They need to skill up their team to get an EVM dev, and it's just a mess. But these guys already speak APIs. They have systems for this stuff. So if you make Web3 just look like any other API platform, the switching cost for them to go from Web2 to Web3 is very low. It's not a whole behemoth, and we've seen that firsthand. So the existing blockchains today have this design philosophy that's historical. It's based on when Web3 was this thing that rejected Web2. We're designing Web3 as if it goes hand in hand, like it's a nice transition. And the way I like to say it is, Web2 was never designed as a rejection of Web1. It was designed as a nice smooth ramp. We went the opposite way, and we're asking, why is no one coming? There's only two reasons to come to crypto when it's so complicated: financial gain and intellectual curiosity. No one is going to go to something complicated unless it's easy to use. So we designed connectivity as the goal. And the technology behind this is allowing networks go off-chain and resume. So it's called asynchronous transactions. They can basically pause, go off-chain, do something, and come back. That breaks all the rules of blockchains today. And this is why, we think it's a different model, but it does work. It means no need for oracles, no need for a lot of the extra stuff, bridges, all these things are kind of removed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Andy, your question is so good too about, why hasn't the modular thesis played out sort of as in as interesting of a way, I guess, as we kind of had all hoped. And I would say we're still on our way there, right? It's just that at this moment in time, we're at the part of the tech cycle where we're getting to the hyper optimization point. We've established that there's a killer use case for stablecoins and for tokenization, and now all the platforms that have distribution for those kinds of things are starting to internalize the value, right, by establishing stablecoin chains. And so that's pretty normal to see, but it's also transitory, right? I mean, I think for a VC, you have to look at sort of the full cycle of how technology tends to evolve, and it's pretty obvious to me that stablecoin chains in particular, they're going to absolutely serve a valuable purpose, but they're also sort of like a Frankenstein kind of thing, right? I mean, that's why people have this reaction to this so-called corporate chain idea, right? It's because it's sort of a hybrid of just the market, sort of meeting the market where it is, right? Or meeting users where they are today. But, what we're most interested in is what's going to lead to the step change, right? And for that to happen, what we're looking for is a breakthrough that actually unlocks a new class of applications, right? I mean, that's what we're all looking for when we talk about, why does a new chain or a new L1 or a new platform need to get funded and need to exist? And so with Rialo, I think what we're seeing is that by integrating Web 2 so easily and by enshrining things like oracles and bridges for developers to use, you actually do unlock a whole new class of applications, right? I mean, people can take their social data, their credit data, they can take all the things that, they've had to leave behind whenever they try to do something on chain. And that means developers can actually do some interesting things that build off of everything that already exists on the internet. And so it's easier to go from 0 to 1 when you're not actually starting at 0.
Yeah. Franklin, then, so kind of building on that, if Rialo succeeds, what does the kind of Web3 stack further look like? And perhaps I think a more interesting question is like, what are we doing today that Rialo wants to render obsolete? And this probably goes for both of you guys.
I can go first on this. So I think what's the Web3 stack going to look like? There's a few ways this will play out. Web3 stack, I like to, SaaS, software as a service, right? If it was a thing, it just looks like an API. I want Web3 to just look like an API call, right? I think this is one of the claim to fame for Stripe, was like few lines of code, you're using Stripe. It's actually possible to use, but it took a lot of work. You had to, the engineers do the hard work behind the scenes, and then you expose an API. That's really what I want. That's the goal here. But I think the second question was, sorry, what was your second question? I think I missed it.
It was basically around like, okay, so, what are we doing today that seemingly going to be looked back? Because we always look back and like, oh, I can't believe we were doing it.
Right.
Man. Like we used to have a landline. Are you kidding me? We used to spin the thing on the phone for numbers.
I have a lot to say here. One of the few things we actually have a demo running on this is, as a developer, one of the things that I think is going to fade away is the concept of needing an oracle, needing to depend on a third party just to bring data that you can always bring yourself, right? And I think the oracle business is great, but it was designed when blockchains were not supposed to see the world. There were these ledgers that hide away. So you needed another system to tell you what's going on in the world. Well, it turns out all that data is behind some API or some service. So depending on some a BD guy to do a deal just so you can bring the price of Google on chain, where you can literally just go get it yourself, right? So we think these middleware will collapse. That's one thing. Another thing is, I call it the security convenience curve. So in crypto, maximum security was the default. Seed phrases, private keys, all that stuff. That's actually very difficult for users to leverage. And this is why we saw Privy doing really well. It's like extension of trust. I already trust Google. I already trust these services. I'm going to use that to log in. People are going to want more and more in that curve, right? Like, I only have $1,000 in my wallet. I just want convenience. Like, I don't need to, my mom just figured out passwords. She doesn't want to do seed phrases, right? So it's kind of like, you're going to see more and more UX features as base primitives. And this is one of the things Rialo offers. With Rialo, you can have different ways to leverage the network. And it's up to you. You can set refresh rates. You can actually do 2FA in Rialo, where you can say, hey, I need to, have multi-factor authentication to send this transaction. We have in-protocol fraud detection, because these things exist in Web 2. We can call the fraud detection APIs. So a lot of things we had to stitch together ourselves will just become table stakes. And then the other part to this also is being able to leverage identity is a big piece for us. Right now, your off-chain world and your on-chain world are two different things. We provide you the option to merge them if you want. So you want to take an on-chain loan, leveraging your FICO score? Sure, you can get better rates. And that actually means it's much easier to get someone from Web 2 to come to Web 3 because they don't feel like they're starting from zero. So this is one of the biggest things. And then the last one that I'll mention is on the partnerships, businesses trying to come on chain. There's a lot of plumbing that's nothing to do with the blockchain. Every time you get someone to use crypto, the hardest part is, we call it solutions engineering. You need a whole team to onboard them. You have these expensive deals. Everything is a multi-million-dollar deal to get a Starbucks on chain, and then it ends up being so costly. All those things are going to fade away, and coming on chain will just be one API click. Gas is hidden behind the scenes, and you're good to go. That's the future I think is going to happen.
I've got a yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing that really comes to mind too, in terms of what's going to change in a post Rialo world, is that we have all of these sort of front ends that are built just for crypto, and that's really strange to me, because blockchains are a back end technology, right? So the fact that we've been blocked off from the rest of the world because of regulatory constraints, right, and because of the hesitation of sort of the rest of the Web 2 world to embrace blockchains as part of their backend stack. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to have less and less of these sort of crypto-specific front ends, like Uniswap even, or 1inch and 0x, that are just meant for trading assets and transferring assets on chain. And instead, I think we'll start to see more and more embedded blockchain technology, right, into the front ends that we already use. So things like Twitter and Telegram, I think, will be one of the first places where we'll see this, right? Because messaging in other places around the world has already been financialized. You see super apps in places like China do extremely well because people like to talk, but they also like to transact with each other and participate in commerce at the same time that they're socializing. And so, the ability for someone to call a blockchain and initiate the transfer of an asset or buying something on chain from someone else should just be part of the functionality that exists in these front ends, right? But that hasn't been possible.
And it's funny, we actually have demos of this already, right? I think I showed it to Robbie. We have demos of composing Twitter and Telegram today without their permission. We can connect two Web2 systems that do not talk and transfer assets. That's the part. This was the vision of crypto that we originally had. So the things like this are now possible with Rialo.
I just want to push back here. So Chainlink is absolutely coming at the Oracle space and basically building an entire suite of products to effectively solve like a similar kind of dynamic of let's just say situations. And they're so deeply entrenched to DeFi, to crypto, to institutions now, with so much Lindy, nearly 100% uptime. You would think I have a fat bag of Chainlink. I did buy at about $1 and I sold at about 20. Last cycle was great. Haven't really participated much since, but like I just don't quite see why anyone would take a swing on what you guys have here instead of just going with all reliable. If it's a very similar suite of products and ideas, is it a pricing? Is it an economic thing? Is it a like why would I ever? If I'm a big company, why would I not just go with what it already exists that is battle tested? The largest institutions in the world use it. How do you guys think about like that, getting over that hump and even like competing with Chainlink?
So we're not actually competing with Chainlink.
But you said oracles are going to be a thing of the past.
But that's the thing.
So,
what is an oracle? An oracle is something that brings data on chain. Today, we mostly just use that for financial, like the assets and stuff. And that's our point. Oracle to us could be anything. Credit score data, your private banking information to use for collateral, to use to signal risk models on chain. The thing is, in crypto, our view of oracles are very narrow because all that's mattered is trading basic assets. That's our point. When you open up that space, it becomes the Wild West. Everything is now an oracle problem. And so Chainlink is doing a great job in what they're doing. But when you think of the idea of being able to just see the world, and one of the things we're seeing a lot of trends on is under collateralized lending. People are wanting more signals to use to give people better rates or better collateral. If you had to, most Oracle providers do not give you that option. Like they don't have access, exactly, but it is still an Oracle problem of like, I want to see the world. Something in the world is out there. And that's our definition is much broader than just what the current Oracle providers give you. So does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Franklin, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think Chainlink's approach is really scalable. And I think that's what's so special about them, right? It's that you don't have to depend on the first-party integration, right? You can depend on sort of testers, you can depend on third-party validators that bring data on chain, and that's what makes them particularly scalable, right? And so, I don't think that it excludes Chainlink from being able to work with Rialo or be able to serve the users on Rialo. It's more that Rialo expands the surface area for people to interact and bring their data on chain. And hopefully we see many more first-party Oracle feeds or developer-initiated Oracle feeds, right, that are enshrined on Rialo. And so, I think that's opening up the optionality for developers to say, hey, if Chainlink doesn't have a solution today for this particular piece of data in the real world, and I need my application to be able to see that, I can at least go to the APIs that are already available in Web 2. And that can be the solution that I use. Whether Chainlink can offer something superior to that, or maybe more real time, or gets there before the developer even thinks of it, I think is fantastic, right? Because at the end of the day, the developer is the customer. They're the ones who matter.
I think it also, I was going to
Please.
I think it also goes the other way. It's not just about reading data on chain. It's also being able to go out to the APIs. There is no service for this in crypto that allows you, like on Rialo can text you if you wanted it to. It can tweet, and we have this running right now. It can call ChatGPT. Being able to go out to the wall directly is a feature that oracles don't give you. But also on the other side, there is a benefit to having these things integrated. Oracles today are not part of blockchains. There's always another hop, which means it's a cost, it's a BD sales cycle, it's a process. And what you get when you integrate these things is, like, when you have GPS in your phone, developers can create Uber. You get to create net new things. When it's always a system that's not integrated, the surface of creativity is quite limited because it's more brittle. So making this a core primitive, we think will start to happen more and more, where developers get way more control on how data is brought on chain, how it's used.
Yeah.
And that's what the future looks like.
I think an interesting like micro analogy in this little microcosm that we call crypto is, Zcash recently has been all the talk. It was this siloed island for so long, and then all of a sudden Near Intents came along and was like, oh guys, welcome to the party. Now, if you think about this on a macro level, crypto has been existing and blockchain has been existing in this larger macro silo. Rialo is kind of coming and saying, hey guys, welcome to the party. Rob, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think these guys said it extremely well, which is that Chainlink creates new data feeds and supplies those to blockchains. Rialo lets you access data feeds that already exist out there in the wild. And I think that is one of the key to understand here, is that it adds that extensibility. My question that I wanted to open up to you guys was, and Ade, maybe you could start here, is why hasn't this already been done? Is it a philosophical thing? Like, we wanted to rebuild this alternative utopia in our own world? Was it an engineering problem or a regulatory problem that, Franklin kind of pointed to, that these are back-end systems, but we were regulatory, we were restrained from implementing them? Well, in your opinion, why hasn't this already been done?
This is a phenomenal question. It's a mix. I'll start with the philosophical ones. If you go check on the internet, you will find questions about this, like, why am I dependent on a third-party system? And it's always just, that's how it is. Or, there was these ideologies that you had this, everything had to be its own network, its own island. And now we have a network of network problems in crypto. One network just for ZK, one just for FHE. And as a developer, it's a nightmare having to stitch all these together. But when we had these philosophies, we didn't anticipate this mess. So it's actually come back around to bite us. That's one reason. The second reason is technologically, block space used to be scarce. Like, you couldn't do that much. Like, Ethereum is a great technology, but we were trying not to overload it. So we had to get another system, right, to do just price feeds. And now it's the opposite case. It's the same way handheld devices, right? Early phones, the chips were small. They weren't that powerful, so they just did calling. And then you had another thing for iPod and another thing for GPS. Then chips got better. Now you could do more. It's the same thing. There's a lot more block space. Networks can do much more. That's another big technology. And we learned this from our experience building blockchains from zero, right? Where we were unencumbered. Me and my co-founder were unencumbered by these philosophies. So when we came to build blockchains, we were just like, there is no rules here. Like, why don't you just do something different? So that actually helped us come up with a different ideology. And then, of course, another piece is just, honestly, great backers like Pantera and a great team. One thing that being able to go against the grain and having someone support you all the way is something that's been immense for us, right? We wanted to, this is not an existing narrative. It was much easier for us to just pick a narrative and go, stablecoin chain or RWA chain or whatever. We wanted to create an entire new class of things, and having the right people that will support you and let you create a category and the right team is actually harder than it seems. It's always easier to just pick what's trending. So I think it's a combination of all these things.
What makes Franklin and Pantera such a great partner? Why did you guys choose them as the lead? Glaze our boy here for a minute.
Oh yeah, easy to glaze. I think you guys actually said at the start, I have this I have these wild ideas, and me and the team, we have crazy ideas. And having an investor who's patient enough to sit with you and go, we're going to hear you out, right? And we're going to take a bet on you and the team. It's actually it's such an immense thing, and you see that in their track record. They consistently back category creators, right? They let you do ambitious things. Like even the story of Pantera was a very big ambitious bet on crypto, right? So that gave us a certain level of comfort that they would give us the freedom and flexibility to evolve. Beyond that, there was also a bit of like it, there's being a founder is tough. There's many places where you know there's self-doubt, there's complexities, and being able to reach out, right? Franklin has seen it. I bother him so much, like being able to just reach out to folks and go, hey, how do I solve this problem? How do I get the resources? It couldn't have been better. So yeah, I think that the entire package has been amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes one to know one too, right? I mean, when we back founders, we are looking for people who can be contrarian and aren't looking for external validation, right? Because that's what it takes to actually build something that's truly breakthrough. But the other thing too is they have to have the stamina to actually see it all the way through, right? I mean, we have so many battle scars from all the market cycles we've been through, right? It's been over 12 years. We've gone through FTX, we've gone through Mt. Gox, we've gone through all the big crises in the space. And that's where we feel the most alive, right? I mean, that's how I know there's something wrong in our heads is that we sort of crave that part of the market cycle because we know that's when we're going to find the best returns. That's when the most interesting things are going to happen. But also, it's not going to feel good. I mean, if you're trying to find people who are going to say, hey, congrats for being in crypto, you're probably not be making the best bets in the world. So, I think for us, finding the founders who can build through every part of the cycle, has a long-term vision, has the conviction to see it through, and is just so keyed in on what actually matters, right? I mean, the developer experience and giving developers more optionality to build the next big application, that's the North Star, right? Everything else doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we have this saying on the Rollup bull market warriors for our fund, where it's like there's so many bull market warriors right now. We've been kind of like pulling out of the early stage side, focusing on the liquid side, because we want to invest in people when it's like, let's say Bitcoin's back at 60K or something, altcoins are decimated and there's nobody else around. And it's like, all right, we'll start we'll look for some winners here. I assume and I hope that the Rialo team is going to be around for 5, 10, 20 years and has that similar mentality. And I think on that point, Ade, what does the roadmap look like? Close us out here. What does Q4 look like, and what does Q1 look like for you guys?
Q4, it's funny, like you just said it. Like I love the piece right now, like building. It's just less noisy. Everyone's heads down. Q4 is phenomenal. We basically have a private testnet running. We have some killer applications that we'd love to share, and it's everything ranging from cross-app interactions, literally composing WeChat and Telegram, and things that don't talk today, to net new RWA use cases, to interesting new loan mechanisms. So we're going to start rolling those out. We have a developer ecosystem that we're working with. We have had over 400 people, developers and builders apply, and we're going to start making more noise, getting the stuff out there. Our style is more show, don't tell, which is why we've been a bit reclusive, because we wanted to have something to show. And then we are expecting to launch fully publicly next year, early-ish next year. And then it's going to be open for people to use. But yeah, otherwise, we basically you're going to start seeing more of our applications. The goal is using Rialo without knowing you're using Rialo. So you might not know, if you're on Twitter, you might have interacted with Rialo without knowing it. That's kind of a thing we're working on. And the goal is to show people that crypto can be seamless. Yeah.
Beautiful. Franklin, what's on your mind for Q4, Q1 from Pantera side?
I think it's just to keep looking for great founders. We're kicking off our 5th venture fund at this point, and it's crazy to say that we're that far down the road. But I think it's one of the most exciting times to be building. Going back to what you were saying about how the market has sort of this tale of two cities going on. I feel like it's a great market to be in right now. If anything, we haven't even hit the bull market yet, and that's sort of controversial to say, but when you look at what's happened over the past year, I think that's so true. You know, we've gone from 60K Bitcoin to 120K Bitcoin, now a bit down, but it hasn't been because the narrative has changed, right? It's just because new capital inflows have come into the market, and that's great. That's great for all builders because it's a bigger pie to go after. Um, but it's just taken us from this, you know, one plateau to a higher plateau, and that means there's still so much opportunity to go after. It's, you know, great that we've had so much new wallet installation, so many new enterprises and institutions and fintechs installing sort of their implementation on chain. And so, you know, at this sort of point in the cycle, what that means is it's a really good moment for builders to reset and say, okay, what is the next big unlock that's going to happen? I just feel it in my gut that we're sort of about to hit that right now, while everyone else is sort of feeling complacent and maybe slightly depressed and whatnot. I mean, that's exactly how it feels right before the big moment.
It's exhaustion, man. It's investor, builder, community exhaustion, and it's like, it's you know, we've just entered this world of like 2025 being this line in the sand here, and it's no longer going to be like, all right, guys, 2 years off, go chill on the beach for a year and come back for the, you know, second year of the bear. It's like, you know, deal with some volatility on the upside and the downside, but like the trend is quite like, you know, it's probably going to be more linear, at least for this, like, you know, the good assets, let's say, and it's just going to be a grind. Like, and for us, I mean, from the investor, from the builder, from the media perspective, it's like it's what we've wanted. I mean, we've gone through these boom and bust cycles where we see our revenue shoot up and then shoot all the way back down, and it's just like it's hard to build a business in an industry where there's no kind of steady state. And now it's just like, all right, who can outlast each other? Like, can you outlast the people next to you? And honestly, Robbie does a great job of this. I'm a bit more volatile. I'm like, dude, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. Damn it, you know. Rob's just like, dude, just keep it cruising. So.
It's my role here at the Rollup. It's Andy's babysitter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you a little bit of something to chew on, I guess, because I think it helps in these moments to know what you're looking for, right? Like, where's the light at the end of the tunnel, or like, where does the optimism come from? And so, you know, what I look for when it comes to the next bull market or the next sort of feel good part of the phase is a big technical breakthrough, a narrative that retail investors can participate in, and a class of use cases that have an unbounded TAM, an unbounded ceiling, right? So far over the past 2 years, we haven't had anything like that. And so, you know, the exhaustion just comes from constantly having to search for that while seeing the prices go up and now seeing the prices go down. It's even more exhausting. But those are the indicators you have to go out into the market to look for, right? And so when I look at Rialo, I see all of those, check the boxes. And, you know, as long as we continue to see builders that are shooting for, you know, big, hairy goals that check those boxes, I think that's the exact reason to be optimistic, right?
Yeah,
Amazing.
absolutely. That is where optimism comes from.
Good
Thank you
place
for
to end
reminding
there, guys.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us of that. Ade, thank you so much. Guys, congrats on all the great work so far. We're not going anywhere. I know you guys aren't going anywhere either. We're going to be building no matter the market conditions. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for coming on. Absolute pleasure.
See you later. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Best of luck. Have a good weekend.
Great chat. Talk soon.
Alrighty. Robbie, good stream today. I've officially decided, instead of complaining about the bear market, I'm just going to buy a boatload of Zcash.
There you go. See, now
I don't even know why.
You're coming
why
around.
Even hold ETH? Why hold anything else? There's literally one performer in the market right now. It's just, I'm just like, why would I like Bitcoin's down 5% today. Zcash is up 13%. I just like, I'm tired of being sidelined on Zcash. I'm tired of it. This thing's going to 1,000. And whether you like it or not, it's probably going to go there straight. Like, I honestly could see it going straight there while the whole market bounces. If Bitcoin bounces back to 100K, Zcash to 1,000, clip that. I'm buying to 1,000, clip that. I'm buying Zcash. It's probably over as soon as I buy it. I'm buying it. I'm tired of this. Let's go.
There's nothing else to it. I'm glad that you're no longer complaining about the bear market. You're doing something about it, and I think the thing to do about it is to buy. So,
well,
it's
Zcash looks great.
to
The rest
see.
of the market looks terrible. Boys, we will see you guys sooner than later next week, live from Buenos Aires. It's going to be a banger of a week. Thank you guys for coming out. Shout out to you guys. We love you. We know it's hard right now, but we're going to be streaming. You'll be able to hear from us, hear from the best builders in the space, hear about what they're building, be optimistic about the future of this industry. So stick with us. We got your back. We're not going anywhere. Easy mode comes soon. See you soon.
Have a good
Peace.
weekend.